What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I am doing part 2 of the assembly of the makeup brush holder bag. I know I said this was going to be a 2-part, but after going through the footage I found there was a lot of information in here that I didn't want to cut out, so this is actually going to be a 3-part video. And here is a picture of the brush holders. There are 2 different versions. So we're going to jump right in here, and what I'm doing is I've taken the bottom, this is the strap that we made that's going to hold the bottom of the brush handles at the bottom of the makeup bag. And what I did is I just basically folded over by roughly about 1/4 of an inch and top stitched. So now I'm going to go ahead and take my trusty template that we made in the first video, and I'm going to transfer some of these lines. Now, the first brush bag I'm showing you right here, I made a little bit different than the second one because you guys are seeing this in raw footage. I've never made one of these before. This just kind of came to me and I was like, yeah, let's do it. So you guys are kind of getting the learning curve with me while I go. And I did find out a couple of things I would have changed about this first bag, and I did make some alterations to the second bag that I'll kind of go through and show you. But basically what I'm doing is I'm transferring that long straight line using this gel pen. And if you've been with me in my channel for a minute, you'll know this is absolutely one of my favorites. It does wash off your fabric really easy. So what I'm doing is I'm taking these lines that are on my template, and I'm going to line up my template by this side mark over here and this side mark over here, and that's going to be the top of where the brush holder fabric is going to sit. So I'm just going to go ahead and mark out the lines right here so I know roughly about how far to sew the brushes to, or the brush holder to the bag. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to show you here instead of just trying to explain it. Like I said, you guys are getting raw footage of me just trying to figure something out. And you know, I actually really like to do stuff like this where I'm just kind of figuring out, you know, a pattern. I think it through in my head for a day or two, and then I just kind of grab some fabric and just go. Story of my life. So we are going to take this lower fabric piece and stitch it. Make sure that you have the hem side face toward the up part of the bag. And we are going to grab all of my filthy brushes. Again, I am sorry. I actually did go through and clean all of these once I got done filming, but like I said, spontaneous, was just wanting to make a new brush holder. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take the brush and kind of slide it into its position. And we don't want to make this red fabric too tight, but we don't want to make it too loose. So you'll see, you put the brush in and you kind of slide it back and forth and make sure it goes in with ease. And then I'm going to take my white gel pen and mark on the red fabric, and you'll see that there's a mark on the black fabric underneath it that I'm lining this mark with the red fabric up to. And basically what we're doing is we're making kind of like, I don't know what you call it, just like a pocket right here. So what I'm actually going to do is hold on this side of the fabric as well, to make sure that the fabric is straight, because if it isn't, then you're going to get kind of weird shaped pockets. That makes sense. So go ahead and do a straight stitch up, and I like to do a back tack at least 2 or 3 times, and typically I will cut my thread from the front side and then cut from the back side, and then we're going to go ahead and take the brush and slide it into place. Voila! And then this little bottom part right here, I'm not quite sure right now in the video, when I was recording it, I wasn't sure if I was going to pleat it or if I was going to tuck it, or you know, how I was going to handle the bottom of that fabric. But first things first, we're going to go ahead and grab brush number 2 and do the same thing over. So we're going to put the brush under the red fabric, push the red fabric up taut against the brush, but not too taut. Make sure it slides in and out with ease, and then mark our white tick. So then we're going to go ahead and we're going to sew straight from the bottom to the top. Now here's another thing I wanted to say is when you're sewing fabric like this, it's best if you start from either the bottom and go to the top and do all of your channels from bottom to top, as opposed to doing this one from the bottom to the top all the way halfway into your project and then reverse your position. And the reason I say that is because you could cause some of these channels to shift funny, and then it might make your fabric kind of curl or your brushes kind of sit funny in these little slots. So if you're going to start from the bottom, make sure that all of these go from the bottom to the top, or if you're going to start from the top and go to the bottom, do all of the channels that same way down. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up through this process because it is pretty much the same thing over and over again, and you just want to make sure. I know it seems kind of tedious, but it looks really good when it's done. And another thing is you can pick whatever thread that you want to be your accented thread. And I kind of figured, just because this has got the little coffins and it's like, I don't know, a little Halloween or Gothic type of fabric, that I thought it would be good with just red and black. They would be complementing to each other. And another thing you're going to see in here, I have this brush, this smaller brush that is a wooden brush. And I noticed that it was a good size and a good fit for all of these channels because of all the other brushes are roughly about the same size. So I just used the same brush in the smaller pockets, except for this end one. And then I went against what I said, and I still stitched from the top to the bottom on that last channel, but we'll just ignore that, okay? Okay, so now that I've cleared off my edges, I'm going to do the bottom. And what I've decided to do is take my tweezers and just do a tuck. So I'm pinching it in half and folding it to one side. And I make sure that I do this with all of these channels, where I'm pinching one side and then stitching over the top of it, and then pinching the other side and stitching over the top of it. Because you'll see these bigger channels, I have one side going one way and one side going the other way. So it's kind of like a double pleat. And I will pause this at the end so you can see it, because I know that that might have been a little bit confusing. But you can see here the pleats go one way on one side and one way on the other side. And that just kind of made those grooves so they weren't too flat, so you could stick your brush further down into the little pocket. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab all of my brushes and stick them in their little designated slots, except for I think I have these two mixed up. And another thing I have to say is, when you're making a project like this from scratch, double check your work over and over and over again. And don't be afraid to take that extra time to make sure that whatever you're building, like your makeup brush kit or whatever it is that you're building, that you constantly go back and forth and make sure that everything is good fit. Because it would be a damn shame to finish this project and then find out that your brush holder was too loose or too tight, and then you wouldn't be able to use it unless you found bigger brushes. So then I'm kind of folding it over so I can see where I want to kind of put my closures. And I think I'm going to put 2 magnets on the outside. And I mean, I already know that I'm going to, because this is a voiceover and I'm already finished with these, but I was just kind of thinking to myself, do I want to put ties on this, or do I actually want to put a magnet? So the next thing we're going to do on this one that we didn't do on the other one is elastic. And I'm keeping my brushes in here, and I'm kind of marking out a little bit where I want the brushes to sit, and then I'm finger pinching it and pulling the brush out, just how you see me doing here. And then I went through and I took all my brushes out and I marked a line that went straight across because I did realize that the elastic was actually starting to wander, and I wanted to make sure it was straight across. So what I'm doing here is I'm transferring these marks that I used for the pockets down below, and I'm just kind of transferring them up further so I have a reference for the elastic. So then I'll take the brushes and I'll go ahead and do the same thing that I did with the pockets below with the elastic. And that's just making sure that the elastic isn't too tight and isn't too loose, that the brushes kind of sit in it snug. And this is basically just tailoring your brush holder to each specific brush. And making sure that I'm trimming all of my threads as I go, because you don't want a rat's nest to start building up on the back of this. You want it to keep it kind of clean because, well, I only put one layer on the back of this one. I think if I would have done these over again, I probably would have interfaced the back of the pleather that I'm using on the outside of the brush holder, if that makes sense. So then checking my brushes again, and I decided I was going to move them all down one notch to see how well that would work out. And they're a little bit snugger of a fit, but it works really good. So here's part 2. Like I said, this one is done just slightly different. I am still top stitching 1/4 of an inch over the top edge for a finish, and I'm using gray thread instead. Now on this one, I'm not building this little pocket holder on the side of the bag. I'm actually moving it in a little bit further. And this is why I said that fabric placement is so important. Look at that. Looks like Wonder Woman's peeking outside from the side of the brush holder. So, like I said before, make sure that you're stitching from bottom to top, and I'm doing the same thing over and over again. I do have a different set of brushes I'm using on this one, so I'm tailoring this specific one to these other brushes. And I'm already noticing that the red is starting to wander just ever so slightly, so you just want to be careful that you're making sure that the fabric is staying taut to the bottom of your bag holder. And then I did end up doing the same thing with the pleats across the bottom, and there you have it. So up next, we need to have a flap that's going to cover the top of the brushes. And this is where my mind got indecisive. Do we put the full one, or do we put 2 partials? So 2 partials, or 1 full one and a partial one. And I couldn't make my mind up. Story of my life. Like I said, this is me in the raw state. I'm showing you as I'm going and making decisions as I'm filming, quite literally. So after 2,000 years have passed and I've made my mind up, we're going to turn this bad boy inside out and go ahead and sew all of my edges. And we'll go ahead and turn it right side out and poke my corners. And then we are going to top stitch around the whole perimeter of this little flap. So now that we have got that whole flap done, I'm going to take an alcohol wipe. This is why I love this gel pen, because you can literally just take your finger and the lightest touch and rub off the gel pen where it's at on the fabric. And it typically will come out of like the elastic, like if I drew on the elastic or the vinyl, it'll come right off. And you don't necessarily need an alcohol wipe to do this. You can do this with just water, but I think the alcohol wipe helps take the fingerprints off the vinyl as well. So now I did go through another extensive, I'm not sure if I'm doing this way or this way, And it was, do I put the flap where it's face down already, or do I put the flap facing up and then fold it down and tack the sides? And what I decided to do was install the little flap for the top of the brushes facing up, and then clip my ends. I'm going to zoom you out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. And what I'm going to do is fold this down so that way it has a little bit more bulk in the flap. So, because obviously the top of these brushes have got bulk to them as well, because they're not just flat brushes. And then I'm just kind of trying to see how I want to tack down my sides, and I'm literally just going to do about 1/4 of an inch front back tack on both edges, and I'll show you this when I get done doing it. And part of the reason I decided to show you guys this tutorial on this sewing machine is because the side of the sewing machine up here doesn't stick out as far as it does on my other one, so you'll be able to see what I'm doing a little bit better. So we're going to go ahead and tack on the side of this one as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut my threads and turn it to the back so you can see where I tacked. And that'll make it so it kind of sits down where it's supposed to. Just a little tack, nothing big. So up next, we're going to actually do binding and adding the back to this makeup bag. And then we'll do hardware installation and finishing touches in the next video. Like I said, there was so much to this and I didn't want to make too long of a video and lose you guys, so watch for that video to come up soon. And once again, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel before you leave. And because YouTube has been changing so much with their algorithms, make sure that you turn on your little bell for all notifications. And as always, follow me on all other social media, and I will see you guys in a few short days for part 3 of the makeup bag holder. Toodles!